viewers, it's yet another episode of the Jctr Corner, which is a show that is brought to you by the Jesuit Center for Theological Reflection in collaboration with Loyola TV. With me in the studio, I have Mrs. Mundia from Jctr. We are here to discuss and put on the spotlight public debt and its various impacts to society. To present the show, my name is Natasha Muhila. Mrs. Mundia, welcome to the show, and how are you?
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
How's Jctr?
Jctr is good. Thank you.
So it is indeed not a secret that public debt has got so many impacts on the citizenry of Zambia. So I would like you to highlight to us and please explain to me and the general public at large, what exactly is public debt?
Okay, thank you, Natasha.
Okay.
I think simply put, public debt is simply what a country owes to lenders outside itself.
Okay.
So when we talk of public debt, we're talking of national debt or sovereign debt. So in this case, you do not include money owed to, let's say, in arrears. Let's say government has not given a grant to a particular institution.
Okay.
You do not count that as public debt.
Okay.
So what you're counting as debt is what is owed to other people outside the government system. So in this case, you find that it can be either domestic or external. So by domestic debt, we're talking of debt that is owed to lenders within a country.
Okay.
And then when we talk of external debt, we're talking about debt that is owed to lenders outside a country.
Okay.
So I think simply put, that's when you talk of debt, those are some of the nuances in it.
Okay, so thank you so much. Coming from the budget season and having looked at the 2020 national budget, it was reported that about 90% of this year's budget will go to debt servicing and government wages, with only 10% left to other sectors. Could you please run me through what could be some of the challenges or what's going on?
Okay. I think generally when you look at the issues to do with debt, it's the concern from most of the stakeholders has stemmed from, first of all, how much debt has grown over the years. We're coming from a background where as at 2011, our domestic debt was at 15 billion kwacha.
Okay.
But then if you come to a few years later, in 2019, our domestic debt had increased to about 60 billion kwacha. That's a massive growth. And as at December 2019, as mentioned in the address of the minister, it came to about 63 billion. And that's just for domestic debt. That's in kwacha. For external debt, it's also one other issue because you're looking at $10.2 billion in June 2019, and then as of December, we came to as high as 11.2 billion.
Okay.
So already the time when we were in the hippie completion point, we were about $7 billion. So you see how big the problem is. So in terms of some of the issues that come with debt servicing, like you have mentioned in the 2020 budget, already we see debt and wages, government wages or emoluments getting up a larger chunk of the budget, which I think even normally, even in our personal lives, if your life is financed by debt, you get some Brazilian hair for 1,000, another outfit for 5,000. At the end of the day, you are getting a salary of, let's say, 6,000 or 7,000. You need to pay rentals, you need to buy food. So what has ended up happening is that consequentially, we have seen other sectors suffering in terms of their, not only their allocations. So in the budget, you allocate certain amounts to particular sectors. And then, so it's not just about the allocations reducing because you're trying to pay back to the people you owe, but we also see the other issue being affected is the actual disbursement
of the funds?
Yes. So you allocate, let's say, for lack of, let's say crudely, a crude example is, let's say you allocate 1 million kwacha to purchase of medicines. But then it does not necessarily mean because you've allocated 1 million, then you will get 1 million towards medicines.
Okay.
You might have to reduce that allocation based on how much you have to pay back. And that is dependent on how your loans keep accumulating and how the debt servicing is going. Because remember, external debt, for example, is foreign denominated. So you're getting that money in dollars. So when the kwacha depreciates, it means you pay more. So that budget that you had placed will end up being increased towards debt servicing and less towards other social sectors. So the concern really for most of the stakeholders, including the Jesuit Center for Theological Reflection, is that with increased data accumulation, we find that other sectors suffer because you just don't have enough money to allocate as well as to disperse to those sectors.
Okay, so thank you so much. I really want to get this straight. So looking at the minister's pronouncement last week, Wednesday, with regards to addressing external debt, which had increased from $10.23 million as of June 2019 to $11.2 billion as of December 2019. What is your view as Jctr? And what impact do you think it has on the most vulnerable sections of society?
Okay, thank you, Natasha, again. Really, like I said, it's very concerning. Jctr released a press statement sometime in January.
Okay.
And we were highly concerned, and as we still are, on the debt accumulation. One, because what ends up happening is, like I mentioned, I gave an example of a household. If your income is much lower, or all your income is going towards payment of the debt, you'll find that either you have to stop your child from going to school, or the time one of the children is sick, you end up going to a drugstore and buy your own medicines. So basically, it compromises on the quality of life. And as a Jesuit Center for Theological Reflection, we are highly concerned with the quality of life that people have. So if you're looking at government, for example, government is responsible for the management of the entire economy. So you will look at economic growth issues, employment creation, you're looking at issues to do with the health, the education. Now, if all your resources are going towards servicing the debt, paying back. So the reason why this even becomes difficult is because, remember, in 2012, Zambia got 750 million euro bond. That 750 million euro bond, added to it, we also got another one in 2014, about $1 million. And then as at 2015, we got another $1.25 million. So when you add all that, it's almost $3 million in terms of the amount we owe to commercial. Now, I have to make this clear. Okay. That amount that I'm mentioning is just one of or part of the loans that we owe. Okay. Remember, we owe people within the domestic economy.
As well.
Yes. Remember the $63 billion. Then we also owe countries like multilateral partners. Okay. Like you get loans from the World Bank, you get loans from the IFC. And then on top of that, you get loans from particular countries like China. And then now this $3 million I'm talking about is now the commercial one. So we got this from the commercial market. So in debt issues or in financing, you can get two types of loans externally. One which is called concessional, another which is called non-concessional. Right. So the concessional one is market-based. So it's commercial lending rates. There's no, leniency and whatnot. Then the other one is you get a lower interest rate if you're coming from a poor country. Okay. Now, if you look at the Euro bonds, those are commercial loans. And at the end of the day, you start paying the interest. And then when they mature in 2022, 2024, you now have to come and repay the entire amount. So at the moment, we're paying back this amount, and then when they mature, we'll have to pay back the entire principal back to the lender. So already we see that we are affecting our space in terms of our fiscal space, how much we have to do other things in terms of our development agenda, our health, and our education. Okay.
So thank you so much, Chama, for running us through on public debt. For now, we'll go on a commercial break. See you soon.
To advertise on this program and enjoy amazing introductory rates, please call us on +260 211 290959 or +260 211 290912 or +260 953 538 000 or send us an email at loyolazam@gmail.com.
In case you're just joining us, this is the Jctr Corner, and with me in the studio I have Chama Mundia, holistically explaining to us on what public debt is and its various impacts to different segments of society in Zambia. Chama, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Okay, so Chama, I would like to know what would be some of the reasons as to why the debt levels in Zambia are so high?
Okay. There are many reasons for one, but I'll just mention two main ones, really.
Okay.
Because I think I alluded to the other one, the fact that we went to the commercial markets, the Euro bonds that we got, which have got very high interest rates. But also the other one has been our infrastructure spending. I think over the years, which also has its benefits, over the years we've seen under the current government, from as far back as 2012, there has been great focus on investment in infrastructure, education, medical, roads. Now we're doing airports and all. So now if you look at infrastructure spending, it's capital expenditure, so it's very high. The cost is very high. I think even at the personal level, if you have to build a house, it's different than when you have to, let's say, buy a car.
It's true.
Yes, so you find that the construction is really expensive. 1 kilometer of road should be about $1 million or some, if I'm not mistaken. So you're looking at a lot of funds going into that. So it has the aim that most governments aim to achieve is to invest in infrastructure, and at the end of the day, you want to see economic growth and social development. So if you build a house, if you build a school or a hospital, you're expecting that people will have better care and all. Yeah. But that comes at a very significant cost. So over the years, Zambia has invested heavily in infrastructure, and it has been blowing up our budgets, blowing up how much we borrow because of that. And then the other problem which we tend to have is the lack of budget discipline. Now, when I talk of budget discipline, as a country, we're guided by a number of policy instruments, one of which is the budget. So annually you come up with a budget, and then you say how much you allocate to particular sectors, and then you say where particular monies will go. But you'll find that over the years, certain times we do not stick to what we plan. We derail from our plans. We said, okay, no, we'll keep our budget deficits low, but we keep on borrowing. You know, you don't have enough money. You know that you said, no, this year I'm not going to borrow more money. Even at a personal level, you make New Year's resolutions. No, we're starting and I'll not borrow, but you find yourself derailing, and that is problematic when it comes to financial management, because financial management requires discipline. Where even at a point where you were thinking you really need the money, you will sacrifice at that point to say, no, I think we need to manage this debt. So those two for me stand out a lot. Of course, there's also the aspect of mismanagement in terms of, if you look at the Auditor General's reports over the last few years, I think it has been a call from many stakeholders that we have not been good stewards. I coming from the Jctr, I'll tell you, as human beings created by God, what we have at the moment is we are stewards. We are not the owners of whatever is in the earth. We are just stewards, given that role by God Almighty, our Father, to take charge and control and take care of. But we have not been good stewards because we are more into just spending and misusing, and this is very rampant even in various sectors of our economy. People misusing public funds, the corruption, and people wanting to gain from public goods. So already all that inflates your costs, and at the end of the day, you end up having such problems like the mounting debt levels, because everyone wants to gain from something, and at the end of the day, you spend more than you planned. Yes. Okay,
that's really a sad reality. But then, Chama, I would like you to run me through what legal frameworks are available within Zambia for dealing with some of the debt challenges.
Okay. Generally, I think I'll mention there are about two. So the main legal instrument, the main legal the law that we have is the Loans and Guarantees Act, particularly with regards to debt.
Okay.
So we have the Loans and Guarantees Act, which dictates how loans should be contracted, who contracts them, who draws up the terms and conditions. So that's the law that guides us. Then we also have the Public Finance Act, which was as at 2018, it was revised to strengthen the aspects of oversight, accountability, and management, particularly with regards to the controlling officers in various government institutions. But in addition to that, we also have international laws that complement what we do as a country. So you're looking at International Finance Cooperation Acts, you have the International Development Association Acts, you have the Bretton Woods Agreements. So those, they allow our country, Zambia, to be able to borrow from those institutions to access certain funds. So that's what we have at the moment mainly.
Okay, so having heard you list down these very good pieces of legislation, I must assume, how effective are they when it comes to the management of debt? Because, you can't have these very good pieces of legislation, but yet the country is wallowing in debt. What's going on?
That's a very good observation, Natasha. And they're not perfect, as with any instrument. Unfortunately, the human element still props up.
Okay.
So I'll give an example of the Loans and Guarantees Act. The Loans and Guarantees Act puts or invests the powers of contracting and drawing up terms and conditions of the loans in the minister.
Okay.
So the minister is given the power, the Minister of Finance is given the power to contract debts on your behalf, on behalf of your children, and so it's that weakness. This is why over the years there's been calls from various stakeholders that we need to strengthen the parliamentary oversight, because what happens is that if you decide to contract a loan, the Ministry of Finance sees it fit that there's this loan, it goes through Parliament. Parliament now ratifies or agrees to get a particular loan. So there's a process of screening, there's a process of accountability, and like vesting powers in an office of a person, you leave room for abuse and the other things. Okay. So that's particularly one of the weaknesses, and that it has been a call over the last few years to revise that. But of course, there's been inertia from the government to be able to strengthen that aspect in the Loans and Guarantees Act. The second one, there's a planning and budgeting bill currently, which is sitting before Parliament. In fact, Jctr made a submission on the ramifications of the planning and budgeting bill just end of last month or beginning of this month, if I'm not mistaken. So the planning and budgeting bill gives guidelines or power for public participation in aspects to do with planning and budgeting. So if you're dealing with planning and budgeting, then it helps members of the country to come up and give what is it that they see as needful to participate, not where one person or a particular crop are dictating what is supposed to happen.
Okay.
Yes, and the other, lastly, there's also policy frameworks. Like if you're looking at the medium-term debt strategy, which ended in 2019, there's been a call to actually extend that. So it was a good strategy because it helps to look at issues of debt and make action points as a country to say, okay, let's borrow more, let's say, from the domestic market. Of course, that has also its implications, but you don't want to have the problem of foreign-denominated currencies, foreign-denominated loans, because of the issue of the depreciation of the kwacha, so you end up paying more. So the medium-term debt strategy came to an end, and there's been various different viewpoints. Of course, there will be an analysis of its effectiveness over the last few years to see how it has worked. So those are some of the things that guide us and some of the gaps that we tend to see.
I see. So having discussed public debt and its various impact, the pieces of legislation that exist and how effective they are, and their various impacts to different segments of society, I would like to ask, Jctr as a faith-based organization, many non-governmental organizations and civil society organizations out there, including the citizenry of Zambia, what challenges are you facing? How does this public debt directly impact on these different sections?
Okay. That's a very good, at least practical question, because people get to see how this whole thing affects them. I'll just give more like an illustration.
Okay.
So government does business with various people in the economy, various stakeholders, one of which is the private sector. Okay. So government does business with the private sector through, let's say, suppliers. Okay. Now, if government is unable to pay the suppliers will be also unable to meet their obligations, one of which includes paying their workers.
Oh.
So as a citizen of the country, even if you may not be in government, you may not own a company, but you may likely be employed. So already, if you're not getting your salary, like I think 2019 was a very illustrative case in point, because in 2019 we saw a number of demonstrations around the country. We saw a lot of people calling for increases in the salary given the cost of living and all. So what you tend to see is that because of that connectivity in the economy, government is connected to the private sector is connected to the Zambian is connected to government is connected to the Zambian. No one is independent of the other.
Okay.
So what ends up happening is that you are unable to, all of you get what is rightfully due to you. And then also, more importantly, government fails to execute its development plans. So if you're spending 90%, like we heard, of your resources on debt servicing, what happens to economic growth? How do you stimulate the economy? How do you pump in resources into the economy for you to be able to get the result that you want to see? How do you create employment? How do you invest in agriculture?
How?
So already you are restricted, and you can't, even issues to do with cushioning the poor, like social protection, that also suffers. Because in an economy, you want to protect your most vulnerable people. So you provide them with a small amount of money to help them buy assets and help themselves, but all that gets affected. So as a citizen, all these things, you can never be detached from the situations that are happening in the country, because you're connected through so many aspects.
Okay, so thank you so much. Time is not on our side. I'd just like to find out briefly, if you could explain to me what recommendations you would put for the mounting debt levels in Zambia, briefly.
Okay, I think two.
Okay.
One, there's need to fiscal consolidation in practice.
Okay.
Not in talk. I think over the years we've been hearing that word. And we need to, fiscal consolidation, we need it. We need to rein in on expenditure. We need to have strong policies to limit our borrowing and whatnot. But it has to go beyond that. We need to see more practical implementation from the government, where we rein in, we practically have fiscal consolidation and reduce our costs. Lastly, we need to protect the poor.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, if the common Zambian is not able to attain or live a decent life, those are some of the issues that cause strife. Remember the Arab Spring in Egypt and the other nations around it. People demonstrated, there was unrest, there was all those things. And at the end of the day, all the progress you've seen as a country over the last few years is affected. So we need to protect our poor by ensuring that our social sector is allocated adequate resources, and we need to make sure we control how much we borrow.
Okay, so thank you so much, Chama. This has been the Jctr Corner that is brought to you by the Jesuit Center for Theological Reflection in conjunction with Loyola TV. With me in the studio, I had Mrs. Mundia as we holistically discussed public debt and its various impacts. Until next time, it's bye-bye. My name's Anna Malambo, Natasha Muhila. Thank you.